This lesson is on solving inequalities using multiplication or division. The essential question here is, how can you use division to solve an inequality? So let's look at these. We're looking at our core concept here. Multiplication and division properties of inequalities, like c is greater than 0. What it's really doing is multiplying or dividing each side of an inequality by the same positive number produces an equivalent inequality. In other words, you can multiply both sides by 2, and negative 6 is less than 8, just like negative 12 is less than 16. So when we're looking at multiplying or dividing by a positive number, we're going to solve these just like we solved a regular equation. We're just going to move these over the same as we would. There's a mistake here. This is actually supposed to be an 8, not an A. So to get rid of this 8, what I'm going to do is multiply by 8. The opposite of dividing is to multiply. So I multiply both sides by 8. So those would cancel out, and I'd have x is greater than, keep the sign the same, negative 40. So when we're graphing that, we'll just say this one right here is going to be negative 40 right here. Let's say that is. So looking at it, it doesn't have the line underneath, so it's going to be an open circle. And let's see, negative 39, 38, 37. We'll just put negative 36 right here. Negative 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 44 right there. Just kind of give you a hint of which way everything's going. And we're looking at it going, okay, x is greater than negative 40. So that's going to be everything this side of the equation, of the line here, is going to be greater than 40. So let's look at this next one here. It's got the negative 24 is greater than or equal to 3x. To get the variable by itself, all I need to do is to do the opposite. Remember, when there's no sign, you're actually multiplying. So to do the opposite, you're going to be dividing. So divide by 3 on both sides. Negative 24 divided by 3 is going to give us negative 8. Now, keeping the sign the same, it's greater than or equal to, the 3's cancel out, and we have x. So negative 8 is greater than or equal to x. So what you're going to do here is you're going to look at, say this is negative 8, 7, 6, there's negative 5, this way's negative 10. So you got, now you're looking at this, it's going to be a closed circle. So we're going to put a closed circle right here on negative 8. And then we're looking at the numbers that are less than negative 8. Because if you read this, you always read it with the x first. So x is less than or equal to negative 8. So we're looking at the values that are going to be less than negative 8, which is going to be this side of the equation. This side of the line. Now, the difference here when we're looking at how to solve an inequality is here when we're going to multiply or divide by a negative number. This is the only part that's different between an inequality and an equation. When you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, that means the number that you're moving over is a negative. Then you flip the inequality symbol. So let's look how that would work. We're looking here at 2 is less than y over negative 3. Okay, again, remember this bar line means that it's division. So to get rid of it, we need to multiply by negative 3. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So multiply by negative 3. Both sides. I get negative 6 here. The negative 3's will cancel out, and I have y on this side. But the part that you really need to make sure you remember is that this inequality sign, instead of being a less than, is going to become a greater than. So negative 6 is greater than y. Or if, again, like we read it from the terms of the variable, we're looking at y as less than negative 6. So again, there's no equal sign underneath, so this is going to be a open circle at negative 6. And it will be going, y is less than negative 6, so it's going this way. Let's try another one here. That was multiplying with a negative. Now we're going to be dividing here by a negative. Because remember, no symbol means that it's multiplication. So to do the opposite, I would divide by a negative 7. Whatever I do to one side, do to the other. Those cancel out. I'm left with a y here. Negative 35 divided by a negative 7 is a negative. Sorry, not a negative 5, a positive 5. Because a negative divided by a negative is going to be a positive. And because the number I moved over was a negative, I need to flip that inequality sign. So y is greater than or equal to 5. So if you're looking here at 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, it's going to be a solid circle at 5. And y is greater than 5 is going to be these numbers. So how are we going to use this? When we're doing it using in a real life application, you're going to look here and you're going to think here that you earn $9.50 per hour at your summer job. We're going to write and solve an inequality that represents the number of hours you need to work to buy a digital camera that costs $247. So first off, you need to understand the problem. You knew your hourly wage and the cost of the digital camera. You are asked to write and solve an equation that represents the number of hours that you need to work to buy the digital camera. So we're going to make a plan. We're going to use a verbal model here to write an inequality and then solve the inequality. So looking at our words here, what you're saying is if you take your hourly wage and you multiply it by how many hours you worked, that has to be greater than or equal to the cost of the camera. So let's say that H is going to be our hours worked. That's going to be our hours. So if we're going to solve this here, we're going to have our hourly wage, which is $9.50 an hour, and you're going to multiply that times how many hours do you need to work, which is going to be H, and that has to be greater than or equal to the 247. Because we have to have more money than the camera costs, or at least as much as the camera costs, in order to buy it. So to solve this, all you're going to do, remember 9.50 times H, so we're going to divide by 9.50. Whatever you do to one side, do to the other. Those cancel out. I'm left with H here. And 247 divided by 9.5 is 26. And the number that I brought over was a positive number, so I can just keep the inequality as it is. So the number of hours worked, H, has to be greater than or equal to 26 hours. When you get done with your notes, bring them up for me to check, and then get started on your clever assignment.